Hello and welcome to this explainer on why Nigeria, a newly emerging economy, needs help with its development and how trade and aid can help it to develop. So just remember, Nigeria is Africa's largest economy, but it's not a rich or equal country. Oil exports provided £30.9 billion of government money in 2012, but per person that only brings in £183 per year. And the fact is, Nigeria is still heavily reliant on foreign aid. In a previous video, we saw the poverty as we progress northwards through the country increases. The country is Africa's most populated, with over 170 million people now. And estimates show that approximately 60 million people live below the national poverty line, and a further 60 million people are not far above it. More than 60% of those living in poverty are in the north, and more than 3/4 are in rural areas up in this northern region. Nigeria's got 15% of the world's children out of school and 10% of the world's child and maternal deaths. Many girls and women are excluded from opportunities. Only about 7% of girls in northern Nigeria attend primary school, and less than 1 in 4 moves on to secondary school. Businesses lack access to regular electricity supply. There's a lack of financial services, limiting people's ability to start businesses. Agriculture is the main job for many people, but it's not productive, so Nigeria has to import food. They have terrorism in the north, and there are periodic outbreaks of violence and protests. So lots of issues, and that's why it needs trade and aid to try and help it to develop. In terms of debt, that's a duty to pay money, deliver goods, or provide a service under an agreement. It is when one country owes another money for something it has been provided with. And Nigeria's got quite a lot of debt. So the oil boom of 1971 to 81 meant that Nigeria borrowed quite a bit of money on the back of that oil boom. Loans were acquired as Nigeria embarked on major development and reconstruction projects after a civil war, when a state of Biafra declared independence. And then in 1982, when oil prices crashed, Nigeria was unable to pay off the loans it borrowed. Its interest payments spiked, penalties rose, and they had a crisis. Okay, so that pattern continued. Between 1993 and 1998, it stopped paying its debts to the Paris Club altogether, and that's just an informal group of official money lenders. And then, with the return of democracy in 1999, Nigeria embarked on a relentless campaign for debt relief. And Nigeria's debt, which stood at 36 billion in December of 2004, was unsustainable. So it was spending more on interest payments than it does on healthcare and education, and Nigeria couldn't reach its Millennium Development Goals. So all of that, the campaigning and so on, yielded fruit in 2005 when the Paris Club and Nigeria agreed an $18 billion debt relief package. So relief on that debt meant it could spend money on other development areas. In terms of trade, that's the action of buying and selling goods and services. And trade is essential to help Nigeria develop. In 2018, Nigeria had a positive trade balance. It exported $10.8 billion more than it imported. And as you can see from the graphic, its main partners there in purple are all the European Union countries. So you can see all those countries, lots of countries in Asia it was trading with as well. And also important trade partners in North America. Okay, and then when you're looking at what it exports a lot of raw materials, crude oil related. So the bulk of its exports are raw materials. It imports a lot of manufactured things. Okay, cars, ships, machines. Okay, and even food and things. Aid's another way to help the newly emerging economy of Nigeria improve the quality of life for people. It can include money, equipment, food, training, skilled people, and loans. It could be emergency or short-term aid, which is needed after disasters like Typhoon Haiyan. But what Nigeria will be after will be long-term or development aid, which improves local communities with education and skills for sustainable development. It could come with conditions attached, like we can see here in number 2, or it might be charitable aid from non-government organisations like Oxfam and CAFOD. The World Bank often organise multilateral aid as well. The UK is a major aid donor to Nigeria, so as Nigeria is part of the Commonwealth and a key trade partner for us, we do provide an awful lot of aid to Nigeria. And from 2013 to 14, there was numerous projects that we launched with Nigeria in terms of governance, wealth creation, health, education, water and sanitation, poverty and vulnerability. We'll just pick a couple of those just so you can have a think about them. In terms of wealth creation, the UK spent £43 million trying to give more people access to formal financial services and achieved 10 million more people with that. In terms of health, the UK spent £100 million in Nigeria trying to increase the number of births delivered with skilled health personnel to reduce the maternal mortality and infant mortality rates, and they delivered 500,000 or 500,000 babies. And then we're going to have a look at this malaria nets example now. This year, or last year rather, 2019 to 20 budget for Nigeria was £220 million from the UK. And the idea would be to build on the achievements of 2018 when 242,000 children were provided a decent education, 3.5 million people with sustainable access to clean water and or sanitation, 10.3 million children under 5, women and adolescent girls reached through nutrition related interventions, and 347,000 additional women and girls using modern methods of family planning in that time period. So all those things paid for with UK aid, and you can see the sector breakdown there. One little case study you could consider is the use of malaria nets. Okay, so malaria is a really debilitating condition, and you can see here 26-year-old Aisha smiles as she ducks under the new mosquito net covering a mattress. Her daughter, 2-year-old Fatima, plays at her feet, twiddling the end of the net that hangs down. She's a happy, healthy child full of life. But less than 6 months ago, Fatima's situation was very different. She was extremely weak, having convulsions and suffering from severe malaria. Okay, so if you read through the rest of that, you can see that Aisha's new nets arrived thanks to UK aid from the Department for International Development, which is also known as DFID. In 2008, it launched a £50 million support programme for malaria, and that aimed to help the government of Nigeria distribute 2 long-lasting insecticidal nets to every household. And women like Aisha, particularly vulnerable to malaria, which is responsible for 11% of maternal deaths in Nigeria. It is curable and preventable, but more than 300,000 children die from the disease every year in Nigeria. So you can see there where UK aid money is going to try and support people within Nigeria. Thanks for listening.